it was an emotional roller coaster for sure. I think emotionally, what was more difficult for me was we had done a great job at succeeding in the way that we wanted, right? We wanted to grow this business. We took something that was okay, was working, we redesigned it so it's nothing too complicated. You need a good UX designer, good developer. That this simple redesign helped grow this exponentially. So it felt like we were on top of the world. This was our first try. This recipe works. Let's continue building on top of that. But then it all came crashing down in one single instance. So it felt like you hit against the wall at max speed.
Hello, and welcome to this special mini-series of Indie Board Session podcast, The Debrief. During The Debrief, we revisit past challenges with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. We will use examples from Noosa Labs and other founders' journey to revisit past challenges, decisions, and milestones with a humility, humor, and concrete takeaways from the lesson learned you have come to expect from this podcast. Welcome. Today, I'm going to turn the lens inwards and discuss a pivotal moment in the story of Noosa Labs. It's a day when overnight we had to shut down a potential multi-million-dollar business after receiving a single email. This is a story about platform risks, about operating in gray areas, and about what happens when platform gods turn their back away from you. I'm joining this episode with Javier André, my right-hand man, first hire, and the general manager at Noosa Labs. Welcome, Javier, and thank you for listening to a first episode of a debrief from Indie Board Session. And now joining me in studio, we have Javier André. Javier is the first employee of Noosa Labs, or he was, because we're now much more than one. He's a general manager at Noosa Labs, and he joined me right from the beginning. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You joined initially as an intern in 2021 to take care of WAMessages when we just bought it from these two students from India. Tell me a little bit about what you did at the beginning, what you were thinking when you saw the business, and some of the things that you did in the first few months to improve this indie SaaS that we bought.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, this was built by two students in India, and they were quite smart. They achieved an interesting product. So, when we got our hands on it, we had a product that was working, but it looked a bit funky, let's say, maybe like a Christmas tree that was decorated by a 5-year-old or something like that, right? Colors everywhere, buttons here and there, and it didn't make a lot of sense from an UX point of view, but it had the bare bones and the basis, and that was working.
And just to riff on that, one thing that I remember is that so WAMessages allowed to send these bulk messages through WhatsApp, and it was doing it in kind of an RPA way. And when you were sending a few messages, even to invite a few friends to a party, it was basically taking over your browser. So
Yeah.
it was almost like there was a ghost on the screen.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you couldn't touch it too much, otherwise the sending might stop. I mean, it was working, and it was being used by a lot of people, mainly like actually some very small people, businesses, for their beauty salons in Latin America, stuff like that. A lot of people in India were using it for their small businesses. And it was quite interesting because then we got some adoption by some larger businesses. Even at the very beginning, when it was a little bit clunky, we had some good, well-renowned universities in Latin America using us for their outreach for potential students and for their admission processes and for their current students as well. So it had potential. It had a lot of potential when we first uh,
Bought it.
acquired it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And initially, so people were finding WAMessages mostly on Google or on the Chrome web store because we wanted a tool for that. And we had every day, maybe 1,000 people testing the product.
Yeah. I mean, we had days where we had 1,500 people trying the product for the first time.
Yeah.
So we
So it's
definitely
a free
knew there was
product.
potential. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was a
And
freemium, right? People had a certain amount of messages to use for free, and then if they exceeded that threshold, then they had to upgrade.
if I look at my perspective, when we bought the business, we thought it would be border. Like we didn't think it was, I didn't read the terms of service of WhatsApp. So that's my bad. That's definitely a mistake on my part. But I thought that a little bit like some of the LinkedIn messages or apps that you have out there, I thought it would be maybe not great, but as long as we contain and made sure that our customers were respectful of the usage, we would be okay.
Yeah.
So that was our thinking at the time. I mean, one big success we had with WAMessages was the redesign. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that, what we did,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
and what it changed in the business?
Well, as I mentioned before, once we acquired it, it was a bit clunky, right? The UX wasn't the best, colors here and there, it was a big mix. Um, well, first we started working with a very good developer, also Indian, super good, and he helped us stabilize certain aspects of WAMessages. And then we hired a very, very good, very talented Ukrainian UX UI designer. And she redesigned the whole thing, the UX, the UI, made it flow more in a logical sense, and then made it look way better, right? And once we implemented this new redesign, things started to take off quite exponentially, right? So the adoption was even bigger. We were getting way more free trials, and then a lot of people were converting out of that. So our conversion rates also increased. Um, and it was it was looking great for a few months.
For a few months. Obviously, the day everything changed, I'll never forget that email. I was playing a game with my daughter, and at some point I was glancing at that email. I think that it was written cease and desist letter in the subject line. And I said, "Oh my goodness, what's that?" And I had never read. I mean, I never received one. And they screwed up our names, if you remember. And then, and also we had our personal WhatsApp access shut down.
Yeah. I remember we had to communicate over Slack because we couldn't use our WhatsApp.
Yeah. What was your perspective when you heard the news?
Whew. Well, let me paint the picture. For those who don't know me, I'm from Costa Rica. I spend most of my year in Europe, so usually in December I go back home, and I was spending a great day in a national park in Costa Rica called Manuel Antonio. If you know, you know. It's beautiful, and I had just come out of the park. I was about to have lunch with my family in a restaurant, and I picked up my phone I wanted to disconnect for the morning, right? In the park, everything was beautiful, beautiful beach, beautiful animals, everything. And then at the restaurant, I picked up my phone, I saw the email, I saw your messages, and I couldn't believe it. Like frankly, at first it was such a big shock that it was like hard to understand like what's going on. I don't have access to my WhatsApp. What's happening? I was sitting down at the table with my parents and my sisters, and I was like, "Hey guys, look, I cannot eat. I need to try to solve this." And yeah, I mean, I remember exactly the restaurant where I was sitting down, everything.
Yeah. It's interesting how some memories stick to your head, uh, especially in bad times.
Yeah,
I mean, on my side, one of the things, obviously, you want to fight. It's a big business. I mean, it was decent size for us, and we had made some very significant progress compared to when
yeah,
we bought it. One of the first thing I did was actually reading the WhatsApp terms of service, because WhatsApp has always been like a lot of these services. They're always playing a weird role. They don't want you to send bulk messages, but I mean, WhatsApp for their API product, they have an API that allows you to do bulk messages. So it's kind of there are some use cases that allow this if you're using the API, which this product didn't use the API. Um, and yeah, I mean, then you see that it's written that bulk messaging is forbidden in the terms of service. And so obviously at that point, you don't really have a lot of recourse. There's not a misunderstanding. It's a clear violation, and we have to deal with the consequences of that.
as you mentioned, we had done pretty well. We had by that point almost 5x our MRR from when we first bought it, and we had to make a decision, right? We could move to the WhatsApp API and use what we had. I mean, we could have kind of used some of the design that we had, but well, it was going to require a lot of effort to implement everything, align ourselves to all the requirements that they have to use the formal WhatsApp API. Or, well, yeah, we consider multiple options, right? That was one of them. Another one was shutting down. And I'm pretty sure we consider multiple others that I cannot recall right now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that one thing that we did is that I knew people at WhatsApp that were working as executives there. And so I reached out to some of them to try to see whether we could have some kind of discussion with some of the executives there to see whether there was a way to keep our business kosher without having to go through, without losing everything. So yeah, I think that these were the three options: shutting down, making the product completely clean with the API, and trying to see if there was a recourse by using our connections with executives at WhatsApp. And so yeah, that's what these were the three options. From an emotional standpoint, what was the thing that was the most frustrating for you in that emotional journey and discovery?
Oof. It was an emotional roller coaster for sure. I mean, I think emotionally what was more difficult for me was we had we had done a great job at succeeding in the way that we wanted, right? We wanted to grow this business. We took something that was okay, was working, we redesigned it so it's nothing too complicated. You need a good UX designer, and then you need a good developer that can implement that. We didn't reinvent the wheel, but this simple redesign helped grow this exponentially. So it felt like we were on top of the world, kind of, like we did it. this was our first try, like this recipe works. Let's continue building on top of that for the next acquisitions. But then it all came crashing down in one single instance. So it felt like you hit against the wall at max speed. And that being on that high from nice, our hypothesis worked, we 5x'd our MRR, and one day gets cut clean like that was a big, big shock. I think that's what hit me the most, like that just break, immediate, bam, and that's it. Like it wasn't like a slow decline, it was just one single hit. And I think emotionally that was quite hard. And also I understood the power of the big players because they shut down our personal WhatsApp accounts immediately. And I was like, okay, yeah, these guys have a broad reach and can do whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think that I think there were multiple things. I mean, obviously you're distressed because it was we thought we were going to be successful. It was very small when we bought it, so with the growth and the trajectory, it could have been a very important kind of money and like revenue engine and profit engine for Noosa Labs for doing more acquisitions and everything. I think that another element was that we saw a few weeks after that a lot of other players that were hit, but basically, or that were not hit and they stayed in the store. We decided, yeah, we'll talk about the decision, but many people, many of our competitors were from India, from Turkey, from countries like that. Noosa Labs is a US company, so even though we didn't live close to WhatsApp LLC, we were still, the US law it was easier to go after us, I would say, than to our competitors. And I think that in the end, when it comes to the decision about shutting down, I mean, I consulted an attorney, and we eventually. The reason why we didn't do the API, I think, was mostly I think we were not confident that the business would be too different, right?
Yeah,
Compared to
it was a very big effort. I mean, it was a considerable effort to move from what we had to an app running on the WhatsApp API. But why we ultimately decided against it was because our user base, some of them were informal businesses, right? The hairdresser down the corner, or the bakery here, or small businesses, small service businesses as well. And for them to be able to use a product that works on top of the WhatsApp API, the registration is a bit of a pain in the ass. So they need to be verified by Facebook and verify their phone numbers with utility bills and send all the legal documentation for their business, etc. And we knew that we would lose a big chunk of our customer base. So the effort versus how many customers we would be able to keep, and if those customers were willing to go through all of that process, was a lot of question marks that ultimately led us to decide to stop it there.
And so when we obviously decided to shut down the business at the end of January, so we got the email at the end of March, and we shut down the business definitely at the end of January. We moved it from the store.
We got the first email end of December.
Yeah, December 21st. Yeah, sorry, December 21st. And then there was kind of a holiday break. And then in January, at the end, mid to end January, we shut it down and we announced WAMessages, the lawyers of WAMessages, that we were going to shut it down. Financial implications for a company, I mean, obviously a lot of revenue and profit that, for the company at the time, we were very small. that was just going away. So, and then in terms of having difficult conversations with the team, it was okay. I mean, basically the developer that was in charge of that, had to, go away. He moved to another project, outside of Noosa Labs. But it was not too bad, hopefully. What's one thing you wish someone had told you going into this experience?
That's a good one. I mean, the first thing I can think of is I wish someone had pushed us to go out of the gray zone faster. Maybe we would have made certain decisions differently. We always considered moving to the WhatsApp API, even before, months and months before we received this letter, but we always ended up saying like, hey, this is working, why mess with the status quo, right? But I wish someone had pushed us and maybe WAMessages would still be here.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, in my case, I think that I should have at least looked into whether WhatsApp had sent similar cease and desist letters to other players in the past. And actually, when I Googled that just after I received that first one and realized that it had happened, I think 5 years prior. And so had I known that, I think indeed that either we wouldn't have bought the business, or at least if we did, we should have done what you mentioned, which is to keep a business, clean, so that we could have, we could at least, at worst, transition some customers to the more the kosher product, and use that almost as a way to get people who had high intent, and then convert them on another product. Almost like you use it as a free tool, and then every time somebody wanted to do more, then you use the professional product, which would have been way more expensive than what we were charging at the time.
Yeah, that could have been a good option for sure. But in the end, I think like without WAMessages, we wouldn't be here. Might be better, might be worse. I don't know, but we wouldn't be here. So,
well, Javier, on that note, thank you very much, and I'll conclude this episode, and we'll be seeing you in another episode soon. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Well, now what are the takeaways, which is specifically important for my fellow startup founders and indie bootstrappers that have listened to this podcast so far? The first rule, I would say, for entrepreneurs and founders that are building on top of other platforms, is that you shouldn't just skim the terms of service of these services that you're using. You have to truly understand them, whether it's Google for Google Store, all the Meta applications, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Discord, whatever it is. Don't just skim the terms of service. You need to understand what is allowed, what is not allowed. And if you're doing something that is what you think in the gray area, is it in the gray area because you think it's in the gray area, or it's in the gray area because it's not even mentioned in the terms of service? In our case, for WAMessages, it was mentioned. Bulk messaging was against the terms of service. We shouldn't have done that, and it was a mistake. So if you're making that mistake, then you need to leave accordingly. Many people that are operating, for example, sending bulk messages on LinkedIn, they don't even have a LinkedIn page for themselves as founders, because it get blocked and they can't use it. So if you can live without and accept the fact that you will never have a LinkedIn presence, then it's fine. If you care about your LinkedIn presence, for example, then you shouldn't do something that could ban that. Because LinkedIn, for example, doesn't give back your LinkedIn presence. In our case, because of connections we had, we were able to recover our WhatsApp account. But we were lucky. I mean, most people couldn't be that lucky. The second thing is that I think that what we did was made worse by the fact that I was a US citizen with a US company, and that if I look at some of our competition, what they did is that they took the hit, but they changed some things in their description on the web store, of a Chrome web store or whatnot. But they basically stayed on, because even though they were going to make less money because discovery was going to be more difficult, the money was big enough for an indie developer living in India or in Turkey. And so they probably changed their phone number, created a new WhatsApp account for themselves, and moved on. And many competitors of WAMessages are still in the store today. But us as a formal company, as a formal US company, I didn't want to take that risk. The money was obviously good, but my ambitions for Noosa Labs were bigger. And so I felt that, okay, we take the hit now, and then we can move on. And we took the hit. It took us 3 to 6 months to recover emotionally, I would say. And then we recovered eventually. So you need to consider that geographical arbitrage in platform risk, and also factor these platform dependencies when you acquire a business that has a platform dependency, or that if you're going to sell, there's going to be a discount if you have platform dependency. Or it happens that around the same time we were looking at a business that was kind of similar, but for OnlyFans creators. We didn't do the deal. Obviously, the first email I sent after this happened was, okay, one of our business on WhatsApp was shut down. We're not going to buy your business on OnlyFans. We're not going to take another risk. But I mean, if these businesses are, because they benefit from the huge user base of their platforms, they are very appealing. But what platforms give, a platform takes, and you need to be aware of that. And so it has an impact on your customer relationships. It has an impact on valuations, etc., etc. For everyone, what else can you learn? First of all, you build where you have control. Make sure that when you're doing something, a product with social media, you are connected to multiple platforms, not only Meta, but also, for example, TikTok or others. Make sure that you have value, even if one of them was not possible. Because if you're going to have your access shut down for one platform, your competitors are also going to be in the same situation. So you need to make sure that you have value, even if one of your dependencies falls down. Also, you need to acknowledge the fact that what looks like a gray area might be crystal clear to a platform's legal team. And in this case, I thought we were in the gray. As I told you earlier, we were not. And if we were not, it was clear for the legal team, and that's why they sent us this letter, and that's why they were on the right, and we didn't even dispute it. We just took the hit and moved on. So make sure you're building on solid ground. I think that the other takeaway for me, on the more positive note, is the impact of is two things. One is that once you WAMessages was, if you remove obviously some of the constraints of the legality of it had a very high churn, like 35%, 40% churn. I mean, crazy high churn. But it had a growing inflow of users coming every day. And that unique distribution advantage that it had is valuable. And I think that we should have taken advantage of it in different ways. So as I mentioned, for example, at the end of my conversation with Javier, we could have decided to use WAMessages as a free tool, almost as an acquisition channel, only send 100 messages, free accounts, whatever. And then those that wanted to graduate, they move to a new platform that is a different product, that is using the API. And then where you have people that are motivated, they want to pay, they're willing to go through like a WhatsApp business onboarding process, and they're willing to pay more because they realize that this is a product that is going to be clean, that is not going to be shut down by WhatsApp, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that that's one thing we should have thought of or considered, instead of trying to say, okay, our product, our users, they would not have done it in one swoop. And I think that now founders understand better that sometimes you have free tools that are used as a SEO hook and that feed into another product that is a main product, which is how you make money. So that's one important takeaway. Another important takeaway is the interesting opportunities that redesigning funky looking product has. Whether you're buying a business, whether you're using a business, just making the same business usable when there is a strong demand for it is a huge advantage. The before and after in terms of conversion, churn were very significant, and our almost 40% churn business, the churn decreased by a lot. And obviously that's why we grew so fast. It's not that the number of free users was growing linearly, but the number of ones that didn't churn and converted to paid was increased by a lot, because they felt, okay, I'm giving this credit card to a business that seems like a legitimate business. And so that's what was one of the key takeaway for us. Having a professional looking UX and UI can have completely change the activation, acquisition, and economics of your business. And that's oftentimes something that we do when we buy a new business. So be careful out there, and I hope you'll find this first debrief interesting. Thank you very much, and have a great day.